Insya, stop recently. Ziba masuk. Assalamualaikum and a very good morning to all, and welcome to our today's forum session. So my name is Saiful Johannes Daniel, but you can call me Sir Johannes, and I will be serving as your moderator today. So today's topic will be whether to cane or not to cane among children, teenagers, adults, and among others. In general, the concept of punishment and discipline are diametrically opposed because punishment is said to be motivated by anger while discipline is motivated by love. So some religions consider corporal punishment to be divinely mandated, and it is widely used in religious schools around the world. Similarly, many people in our country believe it is still an appropriate form of discipline for students at Tafis. However, we understand that a high level of discipline is required to educate and discipline the boys from Tafis in the hope of the parents to change their kids for the better. So before we go any further, you will hear a presentation from our four different panels on this very timely topic. But first, I would like to take a few minutes of your time to introduce you to our panels, which are Miss Aisha, the owner of Child Care Center,
Hello everyone.
and our second panel, which is Miss Sarah as psychologist,
Hi everyone.
and we have Dr. Noor, our pediatrician, as our third panel.
Good morning, everyone.
And the last panel, which is Dr. Raza, work as child development researcher.
Hi everyone.
So, without wasting any time, moving on to our session, please welcome Miss Aisha, our first speaker, who will share her opinion and her opinions on corporal punishment is still a common form of punishment. Welcome, Miss Aisha.
Thank you, moderator. Okay, let me start with my first point, which is corporal punishment is still a common form of punishment. This punishment is, many people said that this punishment is the best way to discipline their child. Actually, this caning is already exists a long time ago without any issue. However, nowadays it become controversial because many people cane their children in a wrong way. According to Islam, it allows light caning of errant children. This is as punishment to children who refuse to perform their daily prayer. We can see that written are common thing that will be used to cane children in school. While at home, some of the parents might use belt and also hanger. That's my view. I will pass it to the moderator.
Thank you, Miss Aisha, for the informative and interesting talk from you. So perhaps Dr. Noor, do you want to add something? Perhaps Dr. Noor, do you want to add something? I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Perhaps, Dr. Nur, do you want to add something?
Hello everyone. Sorry for the technical problem. Okay, so for me, I think corporal punishment is not disciplining because it is just punishing, and disciplining is for teaching, not punishing, as it just shows by the Sunday Times. Because of this
I'm sorry, maybe Dr. Nur might have internet connection problem.
hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, I think we should start back with Dr. Aino. Perhaps Dr. Aino want to add something to our discussion?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, Ms. Aisha, for the impactful presentation, and thank you for the audience for attending our forum today. So for me, corporal punishment is not disciplining because discipline is for teaching and not punishing. As corporal punishment just shows how the parents feel about the problem. As per to what Ms. Aisha said before, that corporal punishment has been used a long time ago. For your information, based on a research done by the Sunday Times, because of this type of thinking, 57 out of 100 parents think that caning is an acceptable punishment to use on their children because of their stubbornness, refusal to listen, but it doesn't really help to solve the problem effectively. As a pediatrician myself, I will speak about this matter on behalf of my patients, which are the children. Whenever parents in a household cane their children, there are negative assumptions planted in their head. Like parents are always right. I'm afraid of getting caned. I'm afraid of my mom, my dad, and so many more. It clearly shows that the parent-child relationship is characterized by unequal obligation, in which parents are always superior and children inferior. Nowadays, obedience is viewed as an essential to maintain family harmony and functioning. For this reason, children were conditioned to docility, receptiveness, politeness, and obedience under the hierarchical relationship between the parents and the children. We need to think of it as what the children might think. If parents use caning to discipline their children, they will think of it of they will think of it as if it is okay for my parents to hit me when I misbehave, it must be okay for me to hit my sister or my brother whenever they do something wrong to me. And not just that, we also know that not only parents use caning to discipline their kids, but also teachers also use it at school. A research finding by Richard Ayati Lower, a few responses provided by the teachers who cane their students said that the students stop misbehaving anytime they see the teacher with the cane. Some also said that caning has the ability to instill quick change of behavior in the students or the children. And some also said that whenever they use cane, they realize that it is the only thing that the students fear, and it makes them change their behavior. So it is as crystal clear that the children behave because they are afraid of the punishment. It is not because they want to behave. It is because they are afraid of getting hurt by the cane, which prove that caning is not effective to solve misbehavior in children in the long run. I think that's my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Wow, what a fantastic conversation to hear from both of you. Miss Aisha and Dr. Nur, thank you for enlightening us with your excellent points. That gave us a broader perspective on how corporal punishment is prevalent in our culture, doesn't it? So, Dr. Raza, did you agree with Dr. Nur's opinion?
Thank you, Mr. Saiful, and thank you for your enlightening speech, Dr. No. My point of view is good feeling is normal for children after doing something bad, either intentionally or accidentally. Besides, the feeling can help improve the child's moral and social development. It is not possible for children to hit their siblings after being punished. In fact, they will be more mature in dealing with any type of problems. If they do lay a hand on their siblings, it is called a bully. Thus, they are responsible for the action that they have done and its consequences. My point is, for some parents, the practice of beating continues to be treated as normal as it should be in the name of love. It is true that parents are accountable to guide their children in a positive direction, and some may guide the other way around. Love is when a parent shows their children the consequences of their wrong actions and choices. Parents tend to be more informative after they have done beating, such as explaining the children why they deserve such kind of punishment. The perks of properly punishing children is they can function independently. Punishment is a sort of training period where the children will learn do's and don'ts, while the parents are the coaches who wants the best for his or her team. I think that's all from me.
Thank you, Dr. Raza, for giving a different perspective into our discussion. So, moving on, I would like to invite Dr. Sarah to give a talk on our hot topic for today's discussion. Please, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator and Dr. Raza. So, first of all, I do not agree with Dr. Raza's statement because I think we all here familiar with popular quote of "I cane you because I love you." After some parents cane their children for not doing their homework, hence the children will believe that practice of beating by the parents is the sake of love, where in fact that is not true. Caning is some sort of physical punishment where, from psychologist's perspective, it is essentially a lazy form of discipline as the parents are simply trying to silence the child with pain and fear. Just like what Dr. Raza said earlier, love is when parents show their children the consequences of their wrong actions and choices. So parents need to talk to their children, let them share their concern and dig deeper why their children are like this. So to add to that, parents need to know that caning or beating repeatedly, even lightly, is not an effective way to teach values, as it just attempt to shame and affect long-term mental health of their children. Hence, punishment is not the only way to discipline a child. Just like what Dr. Raza said, parents are the coaches who want the best for their team. As you are training a child, your child, and you need to know what your goal is. So to add to that, there is no evidence that does any good for children, but points to the risk of it doing harm. It's mean caning can have adverse long-term effect and lasting psychological impact on the child. In simpler words, caning can tip a child into anxiety and depression that many parents these days do not realize about it. So the issue can start to arise is when you can a child, his stress level goes up, and if stress level goes up too frequently, his fear response become anxiety, and if his anxiety stays, it can become depression. So the more frequently or severely a child is hit or caned, the more likely he will have symptoms of depression or anxiety. So this is probably from the caning is used to instill fear in a child and prompting obedient perspective by the parents. Thereby, it can be bad if it is continuously used, as there are studies have shown that corporal punishment or caning is associated with aggressive and antisocial behavior in later life. And children who are beaten repeatedly over time have higher rate of anxiety and depression. So I think that's it, my opinion. So back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. Well, your point of view on this subject is incredible. So let us now hear from our first panelist, Ms. Aisha. What are your thoughts on caning having negative long-term effects and a lasting psychological impact on children? Does it have an impact on the children both positively and negatively?
I think that's a good point from Dr. Sarah. However, I cannot agree with it 100% because actually this method of punishment is not the cause of child anxiety and depression. If we as adults know to how to apply this method correctly, which is caning children lightly and must do it with the aim to teach them, not to torture them. However, there are some of us who take this chance to can children with the aim to let go of their anger. We can see, for example, there is a father who's stressed and angry with his work, but he cannot express it in office. So when he come back home, he will can his child to let go of their anger. Based on the situation like this, we can see that many people will judge caning as a negative thing. So I would like to add my another point, which is children who not can will grow up become irresponsible adults. Lately, we can see many issues where teacher can student. I have read one from the Strait Time titled "Mom makes police report over can marks on science body." What can I describe from this situation is children nowadays are very spoiled. For me, if they really do a mistake, they need to accept it because taking action against people who try to discipline them is not good because the children cannot learn from their mistake and they will expect their parents will help them to settle every problem they make in the future. I would like to share my experience when I was a kid. My teacher would care me if I do not done my homework. So when I come back home, I will tell my parents. So you know what they do? Of course, I get scolded one more time since that's my fault. I just think that this is not fair to me. But now I understand that they do like that because they want to teach me to become more responsible. And Alhamdulillah now I become a better person like now. That's all. Pass back to the moderator.
Alhamdulillah, shukron, Miss Aisha. Well, your point of view on the subject makes sense, Miss Aisha. Thank you very much. Maybe Dr. Sarah can share your own personal experience as a psychologist. You have the floor, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator and Miss Aisha. So I totally agree with Miss Aisha's statement because I think most of us grew up in an era where corporal punishment like a pinch or a caning were still widely used in school, and we accepted it as a norm. They was not a fun experience, but they were life lessons that shaped us as a person, or we call it as character building. So when teachers in school are expressing equally fascinating teaching in student attitude and those parents who always wake up their children, we cannot equate past and present parenting. So in the past, they came to discipline, but kids nowadays would rebel if they got caned. So this is probably from the perspective some of the parents would not want the same thing to happen during their childhood for their own children. I think those roles to raise and educate children, either teachers and parents alike, need to keep up with them and realize that the old way of caning are no longer effective. Hence, teachers must understand student needs and ways of thinking and change their method accordingly because students these days, they are of a different generation and we must accept it. So to add to that, there are many misconceptions about caning to discipline or abusing, as there were many children abuse cases that I handle are related to child discrimination. So in simpler word, the parents want to discipline the child but end up abusing him. So another advice that I got from my senior psychologist, she advised me a little bit about this, where if the parents are not in good control of their emotions, they are likely to hit the child harder than they want to. So as we know, many parents use caning to discipline their child because that was how themselves were brought up. And to add to that, many subscribe to the idea that to spare the rod is to spoil the child. In fact, that is totally wrong. But does it mean caning is the only way to handle the childish issues? Obviously, no. Hence, in this case, parents should play an important role on a better understanding about caning to discipline or abuse. That is why what parents should not do is to discipline their child in anger and keep themselves apart from their child when they are really angry. So I think that's my opinion. So back to you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah. You gave a very powerful presentation. Okay, since this forum was created to share more about what our professionals say about whether to cane or not to cane, we would love to hear from any of you. Dr. Raza?
Thank you, Mr. Saiful, and thank you, Dr. Sarah, for your fascinating explanation. My idea is it is undeniable that parents who hit their children more than they have to is not based on child discipline, but it is clearly a child abuse. Parents know what is best for their children. They grow up and become responsible adults due to their hard and tough past. It is not their fault to shape their children similar to the way they had experienced in the past, as it shows a good impact on themselves. Spoiling children is the worst way to educate them. The effects of spoiling them will ruin the parents' power in the family, and it will only lead the children to overstep their boundaries. My idea is the authentic my point is the authentic child discipline purposes has been teared down by several factors. Child abuse begins with rational or irrational excuses by the parent, which make them see their children as punching bag, no matter if the child have done something wrong or not. Parents who lack parenting skills, like family support, are alcoholics and have unrealistic expectations can develop abusive behaviors towards their young ones. Thus, these excuses are not tolerable and irrational due to the factors that can be treated by themselves without anyone's help. The only reason that is acceptable but should be avoided is the mental illness issue where the parent cannot help themselves from excessively hurting their children. However, this kind of incident should not repeat itself in the near future as well as in the far future. Treatment should be taken and parents are advised to make a precaution plan to protect their children from unwanted harm. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Raza. So, in response to Dr. Raza's recent statement, she stated that the authentic child discipline purpose have been teared down by several factors. So, Dr. Nur, do you agree with her claim?
Uh, Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Dr. Raza. So, in my point of view, that is why parents or guardians should know when is the right time to use physical punishments on their children, because it might lead to aggressiveness, as she and Dr. Sarah said, which might hurt the children physically and mentally. As we know, physical wounds can be healed, but mentally wounds cannot be healed easily, and it takes time. Anyone with or without mental illness issues will get mad when they can control chaotic situations after a few times of saying no. Which means that no matter what state of mental health a parent or guardian is at the moment, they cannot avoid them to not hurt their children using caning method as a discipline method. As to what Dr. Sarah said before, that an angry parents tend to hit their children harder, and that is the beginning of child abuse actually. So there are actually many other ways to discipline your children other than caning or using physical approaches. As a pediatrician, I would like to suggest parents to use a time out method for the kids to develop self-reflection techniques, which means there are boundaries set by the parents whenever their children start to act up or throw tantrum. Instead of caning, parents could actually build trust and good behavior in kids without using aggressiveness, but by implementing positive time out for them to reflect on themselves and their wrongdoings, which also helps them to boost their development happiness, which they help with the help of positive time in with parents as minimal as 10 to 15 minutes per day for each children. And not just that, parents can introduce children to their privileges. Undeniably, it takes practice to ensure children to know their exact privileges and how they could lose them depending on their behavior. It is the parents' job to help them to make a better choice in the future to avoid them losing their privileges, and it should be something related to their behavior to make it more believable. So, according to Pediatrics Journal, uh, an example for the situation is whenever your children doesn't want to clean up their mess or their toys after they play with the toys, parents can actually introduce them to privileges whereby parents will forbid them to watch TV or other many activities that they usually do in their daily life, to make sure that they know if they do something wrong, they might lose their privileges. And last word from me, as a parent or soon to be parent, before we punish our kids, we should ask ourselves, do we can them to teach them or to feed our anger? Back to you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nur and Dr. Raza, for giving different perspective on how the discipline should be applied on the authentic children, which Dr. Raza pointed out just now that child abuse always begin with rational and irrational excuses by the parent. while Dr. Noor argues that parents should have known when is the right time to use physical punishment on their children. So I believe that Ms. Aisha has another point of view on ways to discipline children other than caning or using physical methods. Please, Ms. Aisha.
Okay, let me see this in the general. To be honest, we can see that children today are very different from previous. If we can make a comparison, we can see that children today are quite difficult to control and more stubborn. So sometimes by using a gentle method, we cannot discipline them. So we need to use other method, more strict, which is caning. That's all. Pass back to the moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Aisha. So we can conclude that most parents in most culture use corporal punishment on a regular basis, which corporal punishment should never be used when punishing a child. We do not need to use physical force on children as a way of punishment. Not only can cause a child to live negative long-term effects, but it also has no data to prove that using physical punishment is more effective than perhaps sitting down and talking a situation out with a child or any other factor matters of other factor matters mentioned. So there are numerous alternatives to caning or using physical methods to discipline children. Instead of caning, parents could instill trust and good behavior in their children by instituting positive timeouts for them to reflect on themselves and their wrongdoings, which also aids in their development and happiness. Positive time in with parents as little as 10 to 15 minutes per day, for example, can help to show some love and affection from parents to their children. So finally, parents must consider their views of the culture when deciding about disciplinary strategies. No matter what disciplinary approach is taken, parents must realize that they do influence children by their own attitudes and behavior. So before we jump to end our forum discussion, I would like to take this opportunity to open this session for our audience to leave any questions to our panelists. So any question from
Hi, my name is Hazin Aufal bin Muhammad Asri and I'm from UiTM Pasir Gudang. So I want to ask about whether caning can lead to the increase of crime rates. Is that true? So that's
all
my
right.
question.
Thank you, Sir Hazin Afai. What a good question from you. So I believe Dr. Razak could address this question.
Thank you, Mr. Saiful, and thank you, Mr. Haziq, for the question. My answer is children who are spanked may grow up to be happier and more productive adults. Take me, for example. I grew up with lots of hard time to get where I am now. My parents used to spank me when I do something bad, and it is efficient for children to understand the situation, and there is no chance that the child will become abusive. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Razak, for your good answer. So we might have second question from the audience.
Hi, I'm Aisha from UiTM Puncak. I want to ask what are other ways to discipline children without using physical approach?
Thank you, Aisha. I will leave this question to our pediatrician, Dr. Noor.
Thank you, Aisha, for the question. So there are actually many ways to discipline your kids without using physical approaches. Parents can either use teaching new skills like how to control emotions to their kids, or rewards and praise them for their good behavior to motivate them to do better in the future. And parents can also set a limit by deciding family rules, which also helps to discipline their children. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Noor. So I wondered all of the questions have been answered by our panels. So it's coming to the end of our discussion. Thank you very much to all of our amazing and friendly panels, Ms. Aisha, Dr. Sarah, Dr. Noor, and also Dr. Raza for addressing this interesting topic. On behalf of University Technology Mara, Campus Puncak Alam, we would like to present all of you with this gift and thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much. Habis.